The baby's cry came thin and shrill through the belly of the wind, not the hearty wail of a newborn but a cracked, searching sound like it had been calling for too long. That wind carried with it the scent of dust and manure, dry hay and the sour tang of spilled milk, all baking beneath the western sun. From atop his dun mare, Elias McCrae drew a slow breath and narrowed his eyes across the field. The barn sat crooked at the edge of the Dunley ranch, sagging like it had secrets it didn't want to share. The stable doors hung open, lazy and lopsided, revealing nothing at first glance. But it was the rope, thick, old, and wound cruelly around the central beam, that caught his eye. And her. A woman slumped against the post, wrists bound, hair tangled and hanging like torn wheat. Her dress was soaked through at the hem with blood and dust. A bundle, a baby, lay inches from her knees, wrapped in what looked like a flour sack. Elias dismounted, slow and quiet, boots landing heavy in the dirt. No shouts met him. No men stirred. The Dunley homestead beyond the barn buzzed with midday stillness, its windows shut like watching eyes. His hand rested near his belt, not on the gun but close. Just in case. The woman lifted her head when he stepped into the barn's shade. Her lips parted like they'd forgotten how to form words. Her skin, freckled and pale, shone with fevered sweat. There was something not quite young in her eyes, though she couldn't have been more than 25. That look, like she'd been aged by silence and cruelty more than time itself, hit Elias low in the gut. "I heard," he began, but the sentence didn't know how to end. Her gaze flicked to the child. "Please," she rasped, the word dry as parchment. "Don't touch me. Help her." He crouched slowly, ignoring the heat climbing the back of his neck. The rope had been tied by someone impatient, angry. He could see the frayed fibers where they jerked the knot too tight. As he reached for it, the woman flinched. She was still protecting herself, even in surrender. "Easy," he said, voice low and round like worn river stones. "I'm not here to hurt you." The knot gave after a moment of work. Her hands fell like dead branches, wrists red and raw. He caught her before she collapsed completely, but she stiffened at the contact. The pride left in her was brittle, but she held it like a blade. He turned his attention to the bundle next, hands surprisingly gentle for a man who broke wild stallions. The baby was pink-faced and squinting, lips puckered in a silent sob. A girl. Eyes still unfocused. She kicked once weakly. "Clara?" the woman whispered. "Her name's Clara Bell." He looked up. "Yours?" "She's mine." She swallowed. "I'm Clara too." That second cry came again, this time from somewhere deeper. Maybe her soul, or maybe the echo of being punished for bringing a girl into a house that only valued sons. The kind of cry no one saw but everyone felt if they knew where to look. He stood, lifting the baby against his chest. Clara watched him, something uncertain moving in her expression. He reached out a hand. "You're coming with me." The barn creaked behind them like it wanted to protest. But before Clara could take his hand, footsteps crunched on the gravel outside. Heavy ones. 3 Dunleys emerged from the porch, thick-shouldered men with sunburnt necks and eyes like bored wolves. Behind them stood an older woman, her arms folded, her mouth puckered like she'd sucked the joy out of life and liked the taste. "Well, look what the dust blew in," said the oldest, chuckling. "Didn't figure you for the savant type, McCrae." Elias didn't move. The baby in his arms squirmed. "You tied her to a post," he said evenly. "Like she's some damn oxen." "She shamed the family," the old woman snapped. "Birthed a girl. You know how men talk." Elias's jaw twitched, the only sign he was made of something that could burn. "She's not your property," he said. "She's my son's wife. Your son ain't here." A beat passed. Clara didn't speak. She seemed to shrink under their gaze but didn't step back. Her baby whimpered against Elias's chest. The second brother stepped forward. "Hand her over and be on your way." Elias shifted just slightly, placing his body between Clara and the men. His voice came low now, barely above a hush. "You raise your hand, I'll bury it." That quiet threat sat like a stone in the throat of the barn. No one laughed. He turned. Clara didn't hesitate this time. She moved toward him, slowly, legs trembling but steady. He led her past the men without another word. No one followed. The sun scorched down as they walked, Clara leaning on his arm, her bare feet leaving small, unsure prints in the dust. The baby cooed once as if sensing something had shifted. The journey was long, the kind that says more in silence than 1,000 words might. She rode behind him on the mare, her body pressed carefully to his back, the baby tucked between them. The wind changed direction. A hawk soared above them. And still no one looked back. By the time they reached Elias's homestead, the The sky had dimmed to a softer gold. His cabin was nothing to boast about, wood plain as bread, roof patched by hand, but it stood sturdy, and the chimney smoked like a welcome. He helped her down, careful not to touch more than necessary. She lingered at the edge of the porch, eyes skimming the doorway like it might swallow her. "You're safe here," he said. She stepped in 1 foot at a time. Inside, the air smelled like pine, old tobacco, and firewood. A kettle whistled gently on the stove. On the table sat a small, carved wooden horse, unfinished, half-painted. Elias laid the baby on a soft cot by the hearth and wrapped her with a worn but clean quilt. "I'll sleep out there," he nodded toward the barn. "You don't have to," Clara said quickly, voice barely above wind. "I do," he answered, soft but sure. "For now." She nodded. That night, the rain came gentle and steady. It knocked against the roof like fingers, coaxing out old stories from the wood. Clara sat by the fire, holding June, humming a song even she barely remembered. Elias didn't sleep in the barn, not really. He sat on the hay, boots off, listening to the quiet. Listening for if she cried out. Listening for if she didn't. The next morning she was standing by the stove when he walked in. She had braided her hair. The bruise on her cheek had darkened, but her eyes looked clearer. "I made coffee," she said. "Smells good." They didn't talk much after that. They didn't need to. In the days that followed, something shifted in the way she stood, the way she held the baby. Elias noticed she no longer flinched when he passed close. She'd started to hum more often. She washed the blood from her dress. She folded it neatly and set it aside, not to wear again, but as a kind of marker, like stone over a grave. He carved little animals for June, painted them in the evenings. Clara would smile without meaning to, and sometimes she'd cry without warning. He never asked why. That was the kind of understanding that didn't need naming. Then came the knock. It was dusk. A storm flickered in the distant sky, all purples and golds. Elias opened the door to find the youngest Dunley, barely more than a boy, breathless, rifle slung over one shoulder. "She belongs to us," the boy said, eyes darting between Elias and Clara, who stood just behind him. Elias stepped forward, arms folded. "She doesn't." "You gonna stop me?" Elias didn't answer. Clara did. She stepped forward, voice low but unshaking. "You came too late." "She's your kin," the boy hissed. "No," Clara said. "She's mine." The baby stirred. Elias didn't touch Clara, but his presence beside her was louder than any weapon. The boy blinked, lowered his gun, turned and walked into the storm. That night, Clara stood outside while the rain came down in sheets. She held June in her arms, her face upturned to the sky. Behind her, Elias waited with 2 cups of coffee and a quiet fire. She came in, dripping wet, and sat beside him. "She's got your strength," he said after a while. "No," Clara whispered. "She's got yours." And in that tiny cabin, with thunder rolling distant and safe, she leaned her head on his shoulder, not in need, not in gratitude, but in peace. She had not been rescued. She had not been saved. She had been seen. And this time that was enough.